welcome to Arts and Entertainment. I'm Deborah Gilbert, your host. And again, thanks so much for being here today. So glad that you could join me. Well, again, I'm going to highlight another terrific organization for you to get to know about. They were here in January of this year, and I wanted to bring them back so that you'd get to hear what's happening with them today. And we're going to highlight the Connecticut Office of the Arts and Elizabeth Shapiro, the Director of Arts, Preservation, and Museums. And I wanted to get that right, is my guest today. And Liz, thanks so much for being here.
Oh, well, you're very welcome. Thank you for having me back.
It's my pleasure. Well, of course, you were here in January. There's a lot that probably has been going on with you through the year. But why don't we start with you first? Take us back into your background. Let us get to know you.
Well, sure. So I have the pleasure of running the Connecticut Office of the Arts. My background has basically been in working in nonprofits for cultural organizations, particularly museums, and in the arts. So I am a performer by avocation, an administrator by vocation, I guess. But the Connecticut Office of the Arts is located here in Hartford. And what we do is we are really the statewide funder of all things arts in the state of Connecticut. We are the state arts agency, which means that we are affiliated with the National Endowment for the Arts. So we work very much in tandem with the NEA to help them fulfill their goals for the nation right here in Connecticut.
And I was watching our interview yesterday so that I would get to hear how we were when we were talking in January, and you had mentioned that you were a performer. Did you think at all that you were going to pursue performing as your career, or did you think that you would move over into museums?
So I think that maybe when I was in high school and maybe a little bit before that, I did consider pursuing performing as a career. I always did a lot of theater and I always sang. From when I was a very little girl, I always say I had my debut on stage at the Meadow Drive School in Mineola, New York on Long Island, which is where I grew up. And I'm not going to tell you the year, but the song I sang was an original composition by my music teacher, whose name was Stanley Glick. And it was called Thank You, Mommy. And it was a pageant about the holidays. And I was thanking Mommy for doing all the great things that Mommy does. So that was my first grade debut in front of an audience. And sort of from that, I got hit by the acting bug and performed all through elementary school and junior high and high school. And by the time I got to college, I began realizing just how much dedication and effort and how much the highs of being a successful performer brought, but how very hard you had to work to get to achieve your goals. And so I decided that I would move in another direction. And when I was in college, I was really lucky. I started volunteering at the Academy of Natural Sciences in Philadelphia. I went to school on the main line of outside of Philadelphia in Pennsylvania. And it was an easy train ride into Philadelphia, and I started volunteering there. And within a couple of weeks of volunteering, they hired me to work in a part of the museum, which was called Outside In, which was a hands-on nature center where visitors could touch live animals and learn about the natural environment. And from there on, that was my sophomore year in college, and then I was brought on to help with the overnight program. So I was helping run the overnight program at the Academy of Natural Sciences all through college. So it was kind of a natural. I got to teach in an educational nonprofit museum setting, which I have to tell you is a lot like performing. It certainly takes as much energy as performing does. So I think I moved into a field that was quite analogous to being on stage.
My first thought, and I had shared with you that I'm a former actor and I miss it terribly, although I do feel fulfilled as an interviewer. Do you miss performing at all? Do you wish any regrets about not pursuing that?
Well, so I will say that I tease. So I have the great pleasure of working with so many theaters in the state of Connecticut, and of course other arts organizations, but in particular the theaters. And so I sometimes tease my colleagues who run theaters in the state that there's a few parts that I've always wanted to play, although I'm kind of getting too old for a lot of them now, which is a little sad, but that's a whole other discussion. So one of the parts that I always wanted to play was Adelaide in Guys and Dolls. And then, of course, I want to play the witch in Into the Woods, because who wouldn't want to play the witch in Into the Woods? So I do tease sometimes about that. My last, I was really fortunate enough to work with a group that is no longer in existence, but the acronym was called LOCOS, and it was the Light Opera Company of Salisbury, and that's Salisbury, Connecticut. And I lived in Sharon. I also lived in Salisbury, Connecticut for a time, and we had our own light opera company, and we had wonderful professionals coming from Light Opera of New York coming in, and we did Gilbert and Sullivan every summer. And so I was fortunate enough to work alongside professional actors, and I was in The Mikado, and I was one of the Three Little Maids, and I was Pity Sing, and I was in Patience. And so I was able to continue performing even while I had my other career. Right now, life is just so busy, but I will tell you, I'm in the public eye a lot. And one of the things that I'm so grateful for with the training that I've had as a performer and being on stage is the level of comfort that I now have when I'm talking to an audience. And of course, the older you get, I think the more comfortable you are with your own ability to just speak, off the cuff and off the top of your head. So I'm not disappointed, but I do tease my colleagues that maybe someday I'm going to have to make a guest appearance in one of their shows. So.
How do they feel about that? Are they waiting for you to do it?
I think some of them would be really happy to have me do it. I'm not sure it's ever going to happen, but I always think, it's a long life. I hope I'm blessed to have a long and happy and healthy life. So never say die, right? I haven't given up on my any bucket list kinds of activities. I still have quite a bucket list, so that's okay. There's only so much time in my life right now, but I expect there could be a time when some of the parts out there for older women, they're going to feel really good to me. So.
I bet they will. Now, your title, and I'm going to look here, Director of Arts, Preservation, and Museums. What does that mean?
Well, it is what it says. And so I think that's the good thing. In the States, sometimes you get these weird titles and they're not really representative of what it is you do. So I am very lucky because I run, as I said, the Connecticut Office of the Arts, and that is the state arts agency in Connecticut. We are funded through the NEA and through the state of Connecticut. And we work really closely with both our grantees, which is the entire arts community of Connecticut, as well as artists. And we work to ensure that the arts are thriving in the state of Connecticut. And I've been really well supported here. We are because I work in government, we are embedded in the Department of Economic and Community Development. And I am supported by a team, and that includes the governor and many, many, many legislators who really believes in the power of the arts to transform lives. So that is one of the hats that I wear. I also run the State Historic Preservation Office, which for those of you who are preservationists know the acronym. It goes by the acronym SHPO. And what we do is we work jointly with the Department of the Interior, the National Parks Service, and we run statutory preservation programs throughout for people who want to be doing preservation throughout the state of Connecticut. And those take a variety of shapes. Many of them are laws. For instance, we do regulatory review. So this is a kind of a boring example, so bear with me. If you wanted to put up a cell tower near the Merritt Parkway, which is a designated scenic parkway and a National Historic Landmark, you would have to go through SHPO to make sure that that cell tower didn't interfere with the view shed on the Merritt Parkway. So that's kind of a tiny little example of what we do. We also do historic restoration tax credits, and we run a lot of preservation related programs. So that's what I do with my other hat, but then I have a third hat, which is sometimes more fun than the others. They are all kind of fun depending on what day it is. But I also have the pleasure of running 4 museums. So there's 4 museums that are run by the State Historic Preservation Office, and they are the Henry Whitfield State Museum, which is in Guilford, Connecticut, the Prudence Crandall Museum, which is in Canterbury, Connecticut, Old Newgate Prison and Copper Mine, which is in East Granby, Connecticut, and the Eric Sloan Museum, which is in Kent, Connecticut. And so all of those fall under my jurisdiction as well. I started my career as a museum professional. And so the museums are really near and dear to my heart, especially now as we're really working to come out of this, the pandemic, to be fully open and to have really complete and augmented visitor in-person experiences.
Well, I'm glad that you mentioned the pandemic, because when you were here, you were at home and we did the interview, and I can tell, which we talked about before we went live today, that you were in your office. How has the pandemic affected your arena? How is it being back in your office?
Well, what I can say about being back in our office is I am only in, so I can't admit to being in or take any credit for being in really more than 1 or 2 days a week. And it really depends on what my schedule looks like as to whether I end up coming in or not. Because we have some flexibility still with state government in Connecticut, where if you can do your job from home, you are able to do your job from home. So we try to, all of the employees, and I have 20 people who work for me right now, all of the employees try to meet the needs of the agency to the very best of their ability. And I'm proud to say that we're really, we are doing better than ever before in terms of making sure that we are up to date in servicing our clients, who are the people of Connecticut. So really proud of that. But of course, the pandemic itself has taken, it's taken a huge toll. So I had, as I mentioned, my 4 museums. They were all closed through our museum season, which is May 1st through October 30th. They were closed in 2020. We did reopen 3 of the 4 in 2021. We would have opened 4 of the 4, but one of them is having a big preservation project done right now. So we were able to open, but of course we were able to open with constraints. So we offered timed visitor experiences, limited visitation in terms of our inside spaces. We have a lot of outside spaces, so we were able to use those in a really flexible way. Everybody got super good at doing education programs and virtual conversations using Zoom. We are building our muscles in terms of serving students online via Zoom, but also in person. And that's a whole other skill set when you're trying to do not one or the other, but both. So that's a little bit about our museums. But we did have good museum seasons this summer where our visitation was almost back. Actually, it was really back to normal at all 3 of the 4 sites that were open. But then, of course, our arts community took a huge hit during the pandemic. Theaters couldn't operate. We couldn't go indoors, so theaters had to shut their doors. A lot of our organizations that we fund are education-based arts organizations, and we couldn't have kids in. We couldn't be doing classes in person. All of these organizations, I think we were kind of, like everybody else, just knocked off our regular pathways. And there had to be a time to take that moment to pause, to think, oh gosh, how do we now navigate? I am so pleased to say that I've been reviewing a lot of grant applications lately, and we could talk about that later if you want, but so many of our arts and cultural organizations have managed to pivot their programs into a model that was sustainable through the pandemic. I am not going to go ahead and say that anybody was making money hand over foot. All of the government programs that came through the CARES Act and now are coming through the American Rescue Plan Act, and the extra funding that has come through the state, have been desperately needed. But they have given our organizations time to really think about what it means to operate in a world where things like shut down tomorrow could happen and could become more frequent. So I'm really proud of the resilience that they've shown and continue to show. And heck, I'm delighted because I get to work with creative industries across my job, and creative industries are so well able to take the stuff that comes across and their pathway and just turn it into something marvelous. But of course, the pandemic was a challenge for all of us and continues to be a challenge.
Okay, let's hold that thought. I'm Deborah Gilbert. You are tuned into Arts and Entertainment. We're going to take a break. We'll be right back.
Information is power, especially in times of uncertainty.
In the age of 24/7 breaking news headlines, viral tweets, and social media rumors, we all need to take extra steps to verify information before accepting and sharing what we read online.
Whether inaccurate information is purposely posted to deceive or defraud individuals, or shared unknowingly by people who believe it's true, misinformation can be dangerous.
Is there a vaccine?
Are certain blood types immune?
Are additional stimulus checks coming?
When will we open back up?
Questions are expected,
and they deserve accurate answers.
We need you to rely on information from official sources and credible subject matter experts.
For both Connecticut-specific information and federal resources, visit ct.gov/coronavirus.
And welcome back to Arts and Entertainment. I'm Deborah Gilbert, your host. And again, thanks so much for being here today. Well, we're highlighting the Connecticut Office of the Arts, and Liz Shapiro continues to be my guest. And Liz, let's not forget the website. What will the viewer find when they go to visit the website?
So the viewer will find, and I would encourage everyone to take a look, the most important thing that you're going to find is you'll find some information about the Office of the Arts and what we do and what we believe. We're a values-based governmental agency. But you will also find our funding opportunities. And the real reason to visit our website is to see if there are any funding programs that we offer that match your needs. We have funding that comes from, goes to basic operating support. We have funding for artists. Currently, we're reviewing our Artist Respond grants, which are small project grants to artists who are doing work that responds to needs that are identified by their community, by the state. And we have loads of other grant programs. We also work in collaboration with many partners. And one of our newest partners since the pandemic has been working with Connecticut Humanities. For those of you who are in the museum field or in the cultural field in Connecticut, you're well aware that Connecticut Humanities is a private, not-for-profit, but they fund all kinds of grants for humanities-based organizations, which would mean history museums, other kinds of museums, lecture series, community discussions. Well, we really believe that the arts, culture, and humanities sector needs to be looked at as one sector. And so we have been working much more closely together to ensure that that's the case. So I would encourage you, if you are artistic, if you are creative, if you are an artist, if you are involved in a cultural organization or a humanities-based organization, to visit our website, because there may be something there for you.
When somebody is thinking about your office, an artist, a museum, etc., can they apply for funds if they go to the website? How do they become financially sustained through your office, if possible?
So I will answer that question. We are not there to help to make sure that organizations are sustainable financially. I wish we could be there for that, but we simply don't have enough funding for that. But what we do is we offer, we work in partnership, but we offer information both for artists and for organizations. And I will say there's a caveat to all of this, in that because of our partnership with the NEA, we can really only work and fund nonprofit organizations. So if you are a 501c3, there's usually a program here for you. If you are a creative business, We would be happy to talk to you and learn more about you and see what your needs are. But then we would probably refer you over to the other side of our shop in the Department of Economic and Community Development, who offer many programs for small businesses. So that is one of the reasons why it's really, we're well placed within the Department of Economic and Community Development. What we are really trying to do right now is to make sure that Connecticut's arts and cultural nonprofits are able to handle the demands that they have been challenged by through the pandemic. And that has meant that we have had to pivot as well. So we've been fortunate enough to have been granted by the legislature funds that have been earmarked and named for certain entities. We are the ones who are making sure that those contracts are executed, and we're the ones that handhold organizations who are getting that funding. There have been a series of competitive grants, $20 million this year and another $10.7 million next year that the legislature earmarked to Connecticut Humanities for re-grants. And those funds have been re-granted, the first tranche of those. The review process is almost over, and that's about it will be about $20 million, but about $16 million in competitive grants that are going to be awarded, and hopefully people will know exactly what they're going to be getting before Christmas. And those grants will be going for general operating support to arts and cultural organizations. But we're also there to be a resource and to help you find resources if we cannot help you. So if you're looking for a path forward, if you're worried about your financial sustainability, if you're looking for basic information on how you become a thriving nonprofit, if we can't help you, and sometimes we can direct you into an organization where you can find the help that you need.
Things are changing with the pandemic, and we are moving into a better way, if you will. How does 2022 look for your office?
So I'm the eternal optimist in our office. I think I'm probably always going to be the most optimistic person. What I think we will see in 2022 is I think we will see more organizations, we're already seeing this, in the process of, or even in the concluding stages of reopening. So we're seeing theaters that are reopening at full capacity, usually with masks, sometimes with vaccine mandates. We're seeing arts education organizations, art schools, arts after school programs begin to fully open as schools opened in September. I think what we're going to have is periods of time where people don't feel so great about being in public spaces. Even people who are vaccinated, even people who have had booster shots, there is this kind of weird muscle memory that we as human beings have. And it's what they say about forming a habit. Like, you can break a habit in a certain amount of time, but you can also pick up a bad habit in a pretty short amount of time, right? So we've all picked up the habit of staying indoors, right? And staying away from crowds. I think this summer was great because it began, just being the ability to be outside and to feel safe outside, and also having, so many people in Connecticut. We have such a high population of vaccinated individuals. I think that felt pretty good to people. But when you talk to folks who are in the arts, who are in museums, you will find that across the state, they are experiencing hesitancy to purchase certainly advanced ticket sales at the majority of our theaters have been slow as reopening continues. I think people are just nervous. And then I think, of course, before the holiday happens, it's really easy to say to yourself, well, I really want to see my family over the holidays, so I'm just going to wait until after the holidays. And then if everything seems to be okay, I'll buy a ticket and I'll start going back to the theater. But I'm here to just encourage everybody who listens. Our theaters in Connecticut, our art schools, our community art centers are working so hard to keep you safe. I have conversations with people almost every day just to check, like, is this the best thing to do? Is this another thing to do? But so I would encourage folks who love the arts, who want to get out there and start bringing the arts into their lives again, that I can understand if you want to wait until after the holidays, because we all have so much riding personally on having a holiday season that looks different than it did last year. But after the holidays, I think the gift that you can give yourself is to say, I'm going to try it. I'm going to try to push myself out of my comfort zone and go see a show, or I'm going to go see an exhibit. And I'm going to just see what that experience is like again, being in a public space, being around other people. And I think you'll find that your muscle memory snaps back pretty quickly to that joy of being together and experiencing the arts and culture in our state.
Well, I want to thank you very much for being my guest today. We are starting to run out of time, so thank you for spending some time with us.
Oh, it's my pleasure. Thank you, Deborah.
Okay, you've been tuned in Arts and Entertainment. I'm Deborah Gilbert, your host. Thanks so much for being here today. I hope you have a super day. Appreciate your time. I'll see you next time.